Pastor David here, and I am from an undisclosed location in Mexico. And the reason I want to keep it undisclosed because I'm with a very special ministry, very special to my heart, Radius International. I have followed them for quite a while now. I've been looking forward to actually being here so I could see more of what God is doing. But Radius International exists to train people who have a burden for those people out there who are yet to be reached with the gospel. And they learn cross-cultural skills. They learn language acquisition skills. They learn more about the gospel and what the church is. And then as God begins to move in them, they begin to target various parts of the world. Sometimes teams are formed here. But God is moving in their hearts in the same way God was moving in the Apostle Paul's heart many years ago when he wrote his letter to Rome. I never will forget the moment that I read Romans 15:20 and the impact it had on me and the way I pushed it aside, but yet God continued to raise up that verse and it would have an impact on me. But listen to what Paul says in Romans chapter 15 and verse 20. He says, I aspire to preach the gospel where Christ has not been named, that I might not build upon the foundation of another, but as it is written, they who had no news of him shall see. They who had not heard of him shall understand. Paul had a burden that the good news that he had received, where God met him on the road to Damascus, that same kind of moment could be had by many others. And so he took seriously passages like Acts 1:8, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then the uttermost parts of the world. And throughout the book of Acts, you can trace Paul's missionary journeys where he was actively engaged in taking the gospel, the good news of Jesus, continuously to people who had never heard, where Christ had not been named. And his desire was to continue to advance that throughout his life, and then he died. And that's been passed on and passed on and passed on, and others have picked up that baton. I love to read missionary biographies and hear about all that God is doing in their life to get them to a place where they take the gospel where he's never been named, the things that God uses, and being here and hearing the stories of why students are here and what God has done to actually bring them to this point is quite amazing. But let's think about it. There are still places where Christ has not been named. Now, in some of those places, maybe many years ago, Christ was named, it's been suppressed, other religions have moved in, Christ has been crowded out. But today, Christ is not being named. There's no knowledge of him. They don't see. And so we still have a responsibility to grab that baton from Paul and continue to move it forward. And don't think for a moment that that's God's call on someone else. God may be calling you to do this. And so as we think about verses like that, I encourage you to sit down and read that verse and pray through it. As we consider a verse like this, I want to ask you to do one of three things, maybe all three things. Number one, I want you to consider places where Christ has not been preached. I want you to pray specifically for people groups who have no knowledge of Christ, no Bible translation, whatever it might be. Pray that God would move in powerful ways so that the gospel could get there. Pray that God might use people around you, but we got to get the gospel there. So pray for these unreached people groups. Number two, perhaps you could be bold enough to go to the Lord in prayer and say, Lord, I give you my life. I give you my children. I give you my friends. Lord, I want to be all in. So Lord, I give you me. Open up doors, bring people into my life, cause me to listen to devotionals like this right now, and stir in me and be willing to go. Could I call you to be willing to go, to at least pray the prayer, to have others pray the prayer for you, that you would be willing to go? And then thirdly, would you be willing to give to advance God's purposes around the world, even at a training center right like this right here? I'm overlooking a plot of land. It's right down beneath me where expansion needs to take place. Why? Because God is moving in people's hearts, and there's not a lot of good places like this to come to get the kind of training that's necessary. God has blessed me to be a part of ministries like this, one in Brazil, one in Nigeria, one in India. I mean, there are people out there who want to go. And would you be willing to give to them? I mean, sacrificially, because this is eternal treasure that we'd be talking about. So at least one of three or all three. Pray for unreached people groups. Pray that God might send you, and give so that the gospel could continue to go forward. May God bless all of you this day as I hear roosters awakening to the day.